Welcome to Get After It with Nashy, brought to you by Ace Property Management and Sales.
Ken, as I said before we came on, thank you very much for joining me. I've been a fan for many, many years, and when I first got the response from your team that, look, this can happen, and then you got to tell me, do you write your own LinkedIn messages? Was that you that came back to me, or have you got a team that sort of looks after all that stuff for you?
Yeah, no, I do it personally too, but I also have my team, so I see everything. So I was involved in that, yes.
To be a fan of wrestling is an understatement when I was growing up. I'm 36 now, Ken, but back in the day, and still following everything that you're doing and so many of the guys back in the day, I want to jump straight into podcasting because you've just been on Mike Tyson's podcast and Stone Cold's. You know,
yeah.
How are you enjoying the podcast journey?
Well, what else is there after you're done, right? you can talk about it. So it's been fun, especially in the no holds barred MMA era. I was able to reach the mountaintop and have a lot of success. And the grand prize is obviously the Hall of Fame, and I was able to achieve that in the MMA world. And so then I started working in the entertainment world, pro wrestling. And now coming up, on the 24th of this month, I'll be inducted into the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame. So I'm not done yet with wrestling. I still have a lot of fire left. I'm still excited about wrestling. I think I've got a lot to share with a lot of younger fighters, and then kind of bringing my own unique style into pro wrestling, and hopefully that'll catch hold, which is more of the shoot style wrestling. So hopefully, people will see that and start to like it, and wrestling will go more into that world of that striking and submission, and of course the bumps also involved with that. So it's been a fun ride, man. I'm enjoying it.
You enjoying telling your story now and everything that's still going on in your career? Yeah.
Yep, that's where the podcast comes in.
What was it like in the Hot Boxing podcast with Mike Tyson, when you two just sit in the room chatting about the old days and fights and being at this sort of toe-to-toe with another man in the ring? What was that like, that conversation with Mike Tyson?
Man, it's awesome to sit in front of somebody like that. He's the GOAT in boxing. Arguably or unarguably, probably the most powerful puncher ever in boxing, as far as his knockouts and his mystique. What people fell in love with was that guy walked in, didn't say a whole lot, had the stare, and then he would go in and back it up and knock people out. So just that whole package, and then being able to sit there and talk with the guy, be able to kind of dig deep and talk to a person, not this myth that everybody sees, right?
Yeah.
And it's definitely different than what I think most people would think, knowing all the media and all the stuff that he went through in his boxing career. But when you actually talk to the guy as an individual, he's just a big teddy bear, man. He loves life. He loves people. He doesn't like, being mean or angry, but he knew that was part of the game. But it wasn't one of his favorite parts, unlike me, where I enjoyed the aggressiveness and the fighting. Even though he had the power and all the knockout stuff, it wasn't something that he enjoyed doing. He did it because it made him feel good or made other people feel good, like Customato and other people around him. He wanted to make sure he pleased them. So it was interesting conversation to talk with them and get to know him a little bit.
And looking back through your career and where you started, you say there you kind of like the fighting part of it, but that's something you've been doing from a very young age, yeah?
Yeah. I grew up in the streets in Georgia, then of course in Napa, and then of course down in Susanville, where I went into a group home, and of course they got adopted later on. But even within that house that I grew up in, there was 18 boys there, and anytime anybody had a beef, we took it out back into what we called the pit or the pool, dugout pool, and we would fight and we would settle it if both parties were willing to go. And that's really where I found the person that was deep inside of me I was able to really find that guy because I was able to let out my aggressions into something positive instead of negative, whether it was football or wrestling or going back in the backyard and putting the gloves on and fighting. I found that thing that I was good at. And of course, as my career shows, I followed that path that made me feel good.
Yeah. Now I know your story. So that was Bob Shamrock's house. You got to that you ended up, and I found it so interesting when I listened to your podcast and the stories you tell of your childhood, that when you got there, you were thinking, let's rob this place and get out of here. You didn't sort of buy into what was going on, and a guy was actually trying to help you.
Yeah, especially when you're in the system and you've gone through so many other placements, that you just kind of think they're all the same. Like nobody's there to really help you. They're just there to help you do your time and then send you back into the same environment in which you were getting in trouble. And so to me, when I went there, it was another home. It was obviously much different, the looks and everything, because it was at that time, it was a $700,000 or $1 million home, which back in that time was just, it was crazy. This was a huge house, and everything inside of it was nice. And so obviously that part was different, but in a lot of people's minds, they would think, man, we hit the jackpot. But in a person who comes from where I've come from, and I know a lot of them will understand what I'm saying, is that when you go to a place like that, you obviously don't fit in and you're not comfortable. And so you immediately think about how to get out and what you could steal because this is not an environment you're comfortable. And, but like I said, after I was there for a while, started seeing the actions of my father, who was the group homeowner at the time. It was different. He actually paid attention to us. He cared about what our issues were, what our problems were, and wanted to help us fix them, and didn't just want us to do our time, collect the money, and send us home. So that was a huge, I think, difference for me was when he took the time to just talk with us and to deal with us. And not the probation officer. I thought that was a big difference in my mind of whether or not I was going to stay and just see what happened, or whether I would have been gone in 48 hours.
And what was it? I know you went into football. You had the American football route and things like that. But what was it that Bob did, your dad, that he obviously had the pit through the back, and you boys could settle the arguments and you could settle the disagreements? But how did he sort of keep you from doing that on the streets? How did he get you on the straight and narrow as best he could?
Well, he used sports to help me understand how you could be successful in life. And I've told this story many times of where I went in for freshman football, and I remember a practice that we had where, because they saw once we did pads and everything, I was hitting people, didn't know how to hit, but I would just launch into them. And so they were going to put me at linebacker. And so, but like I said, I didn't truly understand all of it, even though I'd played a little bit when I was younger, but it was street ball, or, I was here at a group home a little bit, and I did some football a little bit somewhere, but nothing where I was really educated on it. And so I remember that we had done our practices, and we get into our first game, or not a game, I'm sorry, scrimmage game. And it was at our place, and some of the fans came in, their parents and stuff came in to watch the game. And so I remember in practice before this game happened, I kept jumping off sides, like literally the quarterback. And this is in practice before the game actually started. And so they put me at linebacker, and I remember the quarterback gets up there and we're all lined up, and he said hut, and I would hit this guard, which was the one in front of me on the offensive line. I hit him. And of course the ball hadn't been snapped yet. And of course they kept saying, you got to watch the football. If you jump off, it's a penalty. It'll hurt our team. We'll get backed up, or they'll get a first down. They'll keep moving the ball. He says, you can't jump offside. Watch the ball. So I was like, okay. So we did it again. Well, then he used a hard count to hut, and I jumped off again. I hit the guard again, which now is one of my good friends, Billy. and I hit him. And I remember he turned around saying, "Can't you just hike the ball on one?" Because I kept hitting him and kept ending up on his butt. And so after that, the coach moved me back to cornerback to play off the ball and guard receivers, because for the intensity that I had and the anger and the frustration I had wanted to let out, I was so jumpy when I heard like I would just boom, because I had so much built up in me wanting to let it out because I knew what was coming. And so he moved me back to cornerback to where I could actually guard receivers that were coming out and still be able to make plays in the field without, causing us penalties. And so I remember it was the first play of the game. We were at home. It was a scrimmage game. And we had a receiver. It was my receiver on this side, of course, and then a tight end, and then the fullback or the back. So the ball is snapped, and, my responsibility is to watch the receiver. He basically comes up and does an in. Okay, linebacker's got him. I look for the tight end. The tight end is obviously going across the middle, so I don't have him. The safety will pick him up. The back is not in the flats. He's going to the flats on the other side, right? So now I realize that my responsibility is to watch any crossing routes coming my way. Well, as I turn to look, the receiver on the far side is basically doing the same thing the receiver did on the side. He's up 10 yards and he's doing an in. The other receiver was doing 20 yards and then a post. And so that would be my responsibility to help out because the safety's stepping up to guard the tight end. So now I got to pick that receiver up. So I fly over there. I know my responsibility. And so I'm flying over there. And as I see that receiver coming across, I'm running hard. And all I think about, I'm not even looking at the ball or the timing of the ball. I'm just looking at him going, I'm going to hit him. I'm going to hit him hard. And, of course, he's looking at the football. And, I hit this kid. I hit him so hard he's blowing snot bubbles. I hit him. Bam! And as I get him, I bring him to the ground. I'm driving my feet, right? And I'm just like, even after I got him down, I still want to drive him deeper. And then the whistle blow. And I stopped, I was like, really stop. And I remember standing up, and the feeling that I had was like, run. Because I just did something to another human being that normally I would get arrested for, that I'd be getting chased down for, I'd be getting jumped for, because I tried to hurt this guy. And I'm thinking to myself, run. And then all of a sudden, I got the teammates all pat me on the back, like, nice job, good hit. I was like, okay. And then I looked at the sidelines, and the coaches are like, good hit, man. Yes, nice job, way to play, good job. I'm like, wow. Then I look up at the enemy, which at the time were the parents, right? I'm looking up, and I'm like, they're going nuts. Like, they're screaming and jumping up and down because I literally just hit this kid. The ball got there at the same time that I hit him, thank goodness. But that was some of the learning experience. I'll explain a little bit in just a minute. But so I hit this guy, and now these parents are all screaming and yelling, hey, they're like that. And I'm like, what just happened? Because this same intensity and anger I had when I get into a fight, I'm not getting the same reaction as I would if I was like now on the football field doing it. And I was like, okay, these people are sick because they don't know what's what. Because I got a plastic helmet, plastic shoulder pads. I got a weapon, and now I can use it on another person, and it's okay. And I'm thinking, yeah. But I was confused. I was literally confused. I'm like, why is that okay?
Yeah. And
I remember my dad, was Bob at the time, was the homeowner. I was like, how is that okay? I asked him. I just tried to kill this kid. I literally tried to separate his head from his body. And, obviously I'm a freshman, so it wasn't, and for me it was a hard hit, but for a normal thing it wasn't. But I still hurt the kid, right? I still hit him hard enough to make him some stop. So I'm thinking like, wow, I'm in trouble. I hurt a guy. But no, it was different now, man. It was like I was getting patted on the back, and I was becoming important. And I asked my Bob Shamrock, I go, I'm confused, man. I was like, that intensity that I had, that anger I had, I want to hurt this kid. Why is that okay? And he goes, this is the thing about life. He goes, if you stay within the rules, you can achieve anything you want. He goes, let me explain to you. If you would have hit that kid a second earlier, because you didn't look at the ball and you didn't care whether you were hitting him early or late, and they would have thrown a flag. He said, then it would have been wrong. Not necessarily in hitting him, but because you didn't stay within the rules. You didn't time the ball. You didn't look at the ball. You didn't make sure that you didn't hit him before the ball got there. It would have been a completely different scenario if you'd have hit him early, which I didn't know, at the time, because I'd never experienced that, right? And I was like, okay, I'm not quite getting it. Okay, well, let's put it this way. What if after you hit that kid, you jumped up and kicked him in the head? I mean, just booted him because you thought you were in a fight. He said, then you got kicked out the football team. Then you might have got kicked out of the school district. And then when you got kicked out of the school district, you couldn't be here anymore. You'd be in another placement. And he goes, do you see how little difference there is between following the rules and not following the rules? As long as you're trying to follow the rules and staying within those rules, you can hit anybody as hard as you want. And it's okay. And of course, it took, long periods of time, a lifetime to master it and understand it all. But that's really where I became successful, was because I was able to relate the rules of sports in the rules of life, like things I couldn't do. But as long as I didn't go outside the boundaries of things you weren't supposed to do in life, you could push the boundaries. You could, step over that and put your toe over the line, but don't break them. And so that's kind of where I started to learn that I could succeed in life in doing things that I want to do and that makes me feel good.
And was the route of football, was that something that could have been a career?
Yeah, I did. I had an opportunity with the Chargers. I got a tryout letter to come and try out. Obviously, I wasn't drafted because I broke my neck when I was in high school wrestling, and of course I went on to junior college. But not too many people are interested with a kid with a broken neck or former. It's you have a former injury of a broken neck. It's not that easy. So I lost all my scholarships and didn't get in. But it's. I think anything in life where you have obstacles, different things that come up that you're in no control, absolutely no control of, it just happens. My dad told me one time, you can lay down and powder, you get up, do something about it. And I think that is a great words of wisdom, because you truly are the only one that can change how things are going to be. And if you're willing to work for it and do whatever it takes to get to where you need to be, you can be successful. And so I, even through adversity, I learned a lot through adversity.
And it's clear from your story that Bob and the route he took you into sports kind of saved your life. How bad were things getting at the age you were when you were street fighting, living on the streets? Were people targeting you because they maybe knew you were a good fighter, and to beat you on the streets would get them up a level on the streets? How was life on the streets?
Yeah, if you're talking about when I was younger, before I ended up in Bob Shamrock's home, I wasn't the king. I was just another kid on the street, fighting to survive. And I was I think I was 9 and 10 and 11 years old, on the street, living out of a car, in and out of juvenile hall. Sometimes I'd be at my home, but then I'd run away. Then I would end up at juvenile hall, and then I would be in placements. So I bounced around till I was 13 years old. Time I was 8, 9, and 10 years old, I was running away from home and living in and out of places, cars, boxes. Just didn't want to be there. Ended up in placement at 10 years old, and then I started my journey running away from group homes and in and out of juvenile hall, and fighting everywhere. But at that age, there's really there's no way I'm going to be, the baddest guy around, because there's too many older kids around. So that's not going to happen. But when I was in the group home, the Shamrock Boys home, when I was 16 years old, I ran the house, and there wasn't even the kids that were 17, 18 years old. None of them messed with me.
They couldn't deal with you. They couldn't deal with you in the pit.
No, because one, if it came to just striking where I was standing up, they had to have better cardio. And most of the time they may beat me up for 2 or 3 minutes, but they're going to get tired, and I won't. I didn't, and I would just beat them up because they would get so tired. But if it came to just a street fight, sometimes in the pit, if it was one of those matches where people were angry at each other and they had a beef, then my dad would say, go at it. And that's really where it was like, if you got on the ground, you could still punch them, but you had gloves on. You couldn't do it bare-fisted, but you get in there and you start fighting each other. And then if you're on the ground, so be it. You go there too. So it was, if I wasn't tougher than them, and I'd outlast them, and they'd get tired, and then I'd beat them up. And I was only 160 pounds at the time, but I was benching 315. So I was not very big, but I was very strong, and I had great cardio.
Yeah. And at what stage, after the broken neck and recovery and moving on through sports, at what stage did Japan and pancreas come up? When did the sort of fighting become a job? Yeah,
I broke my neck when I was 17, 1 month away from my 18th birthday. I was going to be graduating. I had some scholarship opportunities with wrestling and football. And I broke my neck, and then when that happened, I lost it all. Nobody would touch me with a 10-foot pole, and so it disappeared. And then I was told that everybody contact sports again, which was another thing. The only reason why I was being successful, and then I thought I had a place in life, was because I was good at something, and that was all taken away. And of course, then the thing with my dad, where he said, "You lay there and pound, get up, do something about it." And, I took that to heart, and I did. Ended up doing college football, played well there, but still couldn't get into a university. So I needed to look other places. And so I remembered, doing pro wrestling in Mooresville, North Carolina. And I went to Buzz Sawyer's, and I didn't do much in Sacramento, just beating guys up. Then he ended up dying, OD'd in the bathroom in a nightclub. So I ended up going to Mooresville, North Carolina, and working with Nelson Royal in his club, and started doing pro wrestling there. And I started finding a niche, and it felt good. I did some WWF house shows in Winston. So it was fun to see the show, and have a shot at that. But then I saw a videotape of it was called UWF, and there was Funaki and Suzuki were the guys that I watched, two of the younger guys in that organization. And I watched it, and I was just completely blown away, because I'd never seen anything like this before. The closest thing I ever seen was a street fight, or what we were doing at the ranch with gloves on, and we'd be able to fight and take people down and punch them. But these guys were open hand striking. They were kicking and punching. They were kneeing, and they go to the ground, and they had all these chokes, arm bars, and leg locks. And I was just completely blown away about how you could literally take somebody out by these joint manipulations. And I literally said, I want to do that. And of course, Dean Malenko, who we were traveling together at the time, he came up from Florida, was working that territory. And he's the one that showed me the tape. And so I was like, okay, I want to do that. Well, it so happened that his dad was the one that had the gym where all these guys were training at from the U.S. that were going over to Japan. And Sammy Saranaka was the booker for the U.S., who was a Japanese guy from there, who was living in San Diego at the time and was looking for talent. And so I went up there and did a tryout. I did well, went through a bunch of guys. Just the street tough to send me, no challenge. Then I went up to Japan. They invited me up there to go up to there, and I was excited. And so we get up there. I fly in a 10, 11-hour flight and drive me straight to the dojo. They said, get dressed. Didn't even go to the hotel, just get dressed. Go in there. I start rolling with a bunch of guys, one guy for 20 minutes, beat him up, another guy for 20 minutes, beat him up. And then, of course, Minoru Suzuki and Masa Funaki come in, and I was watching them come in, and everybody just got quiet and bowed. And I was like, those are the two guys. Well, Sammy goes, "Hey, you ready to go some more?" Absolutely, because I felt good. Like I just destroyed these other kids. And so Suzuki comes in and just whips the tar out of me. I mean, he's 180 pounds. You know, I was probably 205, 210. And I was strong. And I'd never been beat up. Like I'd never lost a fight. And here I was, this guy coming in and 180 pounds and just chokes me out. And I'm like, don't even know I was choked out. And he just beats me up. And then he asked if Sammy goes, "You want to go again?" Absolutely. Because I felt like I screwed up. Like, man, I want to try it again. Well, then he brings Funaki in, and that was even worse. I mean, I just got handled, and it never happened to me. It's just never happened to me like that, you know, where I was a grown man, and these guys were handling me like they were having their way. And I had never experienced that. And I was like, and I knew why, though. I knew it was because wherever I moved, they would grab something and they would break my arm or leg. They didn't break it, but they could have. And I remember thinking, I want to do this, man. And Sammy sent me home. And I thought I messed up. I literally thought I screwed up, man. I'm not going to do this. And I was so depressed because I was so interested in what just happened to me. I wasn't mad it happened to me. I was mad I didn't do better. But I couldn't figure in my mind how I could other than knocking them out. And of course, we couldn't do that, right? And so I'm just like, and I was a wrestler. So, I mean, I was a really good wrestler.
Ken,
and yet I was.
What style of fighting were they doing? What were you not used to that they got the better of you? What were they doing?
Well, the things that they were doing was that even when I was stronger than I was attacking them, they would roll up and catch arm bars, or they would choke me, or they would get down to my legs, which was something that really hindered me because my arms, I could usually break loose and stuff. But when they got my legs, I didn't know how to defend that. Like, how do you stop somebody from doing a knee bar when you can't grab anything? And so that's really what got me the most was the ankle, the heel hooks, the knee bars, because I couldn't grab those. As I got tired, they choked me and did other things to me. But it was really that really took away my strength because I didn't know how to attack that. So that's how, you know, I really got into the MMA stuff was my experience with that. And then when they called me back to have a fight, man, game on. And I won that first fight, but I didn't want to let that slip through my fingers.
Yeah. What's when did the heel hook and everything and the lower body submission moves come into your repertoire? Was that working with those guys? You thought I've got to develop that and be able to finish fights from any position?
Yeah, you know, that was one thing that hurt the most. So that's the thing I learned first was the heel hook. And of course, if you know my record over in Japan, I heel hooked everybody and I was the best at it. And I really enjoyed that because it felt like it was a move that you could, if it was if you were in a street fight, you could literally cripple the guy. Like he couldn't walk. And but in a real match, it was a point where it hurt. And of course, it was their own decision whether or not if they fought to get out of it, they'd break their leg. They would break their own ankle, not me. And it then happened 4 times with me where I hooked the guy's heel, and it was up to them to tap or to fight to get out, and they fought to get out, and they broke their leg. So to me, that was the move. And of course, today everybody knows that the Gracies outlawed that for the longest time in jiu-jitsu tournaments because they said it was too dangerous.
Well, I mean, let's go there. Let's go to Royce Gracie and your fights against him. I mean, it's just legendary. You know, back in the UFC, it's talk us about that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it was awesome to be able to have what we have today, you know, and it wouldn't be here without Horian Gracie, Art Davies, Bob Meyerowitz. You know, it just wouldn't be. And then, of course, you know, the Fertitas, you know, where they actually brought it back because it was dying. So there's a lot of people that were and Dana White, you know, because Dana was the mastermind in getting all that put together. But there's definitely a lot of people involved to be able to have this great sport that we have, this great event, combat sport that we have. And so it's awesome, man. I tell you, it's really a good feeling to look back on and see that and see how it's developed over the years. So, yeah. And I hope someday that the story will be told without biased opinions. Because if the Gracies tell it, it's going to be their side. And if somebody else tells it, like, Bob Meyer, which is somebody that's going to be biased. If I tell it, it's going to be biased. I just want somebody to be able to go out there and put that together and really do the study on numbers and who was drawing what, and who was the ones that were the most impact during those times, and really highlight those things so that people have a true understanding of the evolution of that combat sport, and then give credit to people who were in the very first one and the ones beyond that helped the sport be where it's at today.
Yeah. You see on just moving from around sports from UFC to it's WWE now, but when you were in it was the WWF. Myself growing up, I'm a huge fan. Was that hard for you to go from the sort of fighting environment that you were in to, as we know the WWF was, and it's discussed now, a predetermined finish or ending? Were you how did a guy like you, who's so used to the real thing? Now, I'm not saying, pro wrestling, they're real athletes and they get injured and the bangs are real, but do you know what I mean there? You were so aggressive in finishing fights to then being told how it's going to go.
Yeah, but I think where most people fail to realize is I was a pro wrestler first. I was over in Mooresville, North Carolina. I worked with Buzz a little bit, and then, of course, I was in Mooresville, North Carolina, where I actually was over there for 2.5 years working on my pro wrestling skills. Had a couple shots with WWF as Vince Torelli, Mr. Wrestling Vince Torelli. And so I started in it. And then, of course, I saw the Pancrase or the UWF video, and then I went and did tryouts. Of course, then I started going over there and doing that stuff. The very first part of that with the UWF and Fujiwara Gumi, except for one fight, which was Don Naka-Nielsen, which was a kickboxer. All the ones before that were basically pro wrestling. Okay. But the Don Naka-Nielsen, along with Takahashi, his fight, those were the two on that card when it was Fujiwara Gumi that were the real fights. There was only two of them. It was me and Takahashi. Of course, then we went on to do the real thing with Pancrase, whereas that we went in and we, the guy that was fighting, would go in there and he'd fight, he'd win. And so that was the journey on that. And so for me to be a part of the growth of that, the start of that, and have history with that is just a great feeling, and you talk about being in the Hall of Fame. That is the icing on top of the cake.
Yeah. What's a meeting like with Vince McMahon? What's that environment like when you go into a room and talk to Vince McMahon?
For me, I never had an issue with it. Vince was pretty straightforward. I'm sure he had his own ideas and thoughts that he wanted to do that he didn't share with people, but I never felt like that Vince had ever did me wrong. There was some things that, we had to discuss or go through with some rights and stuff like that. But, I never thought he did me wrong. I thought I had a great opportunity there. He gave me an opportunity to go from fighting into a mainstream, business and be able to get my name to grow even bigger. But I had to do the work, obviously, and I thought I did what I needed to do to make sure that they got their money's worth. So as far as Vince and myself, I thought, we had a good business relationship. We both were happy with what we got, considering what he paid me, considering what I was able to do for him. It was a good business. And, of course, then we had to move on. And I think that's where we're at now, whereas I had to move on and they moved on, and we both have been fine since then. So I think Vince, as far as I'm concerned, is done a great thing for fans to be able to enjoy entertainment.
Yeah, and what about 1998 King of the Ring versus The Rock? That was a memorable match. Any good stories behind the scenes before you went out? Anything interesting happen around that fight?
No, not that one, but the one where he hit me with the chair. The chair shot heard around the world. I remember we were discussing that because no one ever done that, right? And they were talking about using the chair and then hitting me on the back, and I was like, I ain't selling that. Like, on the back? I was like, I'm a fighter, man. I've been hit with fists in the face. I said, I just don't feel comfortable about that. And he goes, what do you want? I said, he goes, well, I'll hit you in the head. And I was like, well, where are you going to do it? And he goes, he shows me. And I was like, I said, I can't see it. And he goes, well, what do you want to do? I go, hit me in the face. He looked at it, literally his face just like, yeah, funny. Like, thought I was kidding. Like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. No, really. I said, no, he hit me in the face. He looked at me and he goes, I'm not hitting you in the face. I go, Rock, seriously, hit me in the face. I will take care of myself. I promise. He looks at me and he goes, man, you're either crazy or you're stupid. I was like, come on, man. I said, literally, I will take care of it. I said, you swing it and I'll put my forehead into it. I said, but I don't like to not see where I'm going to get hit. I said, but if I can see it, I feel better about it. Like, I'll take care of what you're doing. And he goes, are you sure? I go, man, I'm absolutely sure. Just do it. I promise you. If it goes bad, it's on me. And he was looking at me going, all right, man. I said, and then I looked at him as he's walking away and I said, Rob, he goes, what? I go, you better bring it, because if you don't, I ain't selling. I'm not going to sell it. He looks at me and he goes, oh, I'll bring it. He goes, but I hope you know what you're doing. So, of course, then you see the chair shot, and it was good. It was fine.
It was fine. In the change room the other night, just to get my mind back into wrestling, I watched Beyond the Mat, sort of the Mick Foley story, Jake the Snake Roberts. What was life on the road like as a WWF wrestler? I mean, was it hard life?
It can be, yeah. Especially if you allow yourself to get caught up in stuff outside the ring, because you don't have a whole lot of time, especially when you're on the road and you're traveling and you're doing 5 different days, and each day is in a different town, and so you got to drive 2 hours or 3 hours to the next town after the show or in the morning. So if you go out and you have a few drinks, or you go out with some girl or hang out with some friends, then you got to get up in the morning and you're tired and you drive. And of course you get to the arena, then you're tired and you don't get time to go to the gym or eat properly. And so you get behind that 8 ball when you're on the road. You never catch up. You're always going to be late. You're always going to be tired. You're not going to get the proper foods you need. And then when you get in the ring, you're not going to be mentally prepared to do your job. And I ran into that myself, I had JR come up to me one time when I was late and, pretty much, gave me a whooping verbally. And it was due, because I was slacking, because I got caught up into that fun time, and I was good at it. Like, I was naturally pretty good at it. And so a lot of people have to work hard to do it, this and that. And it just kind of came natural to me, where I was out there just doing it. And so, when he did that, of course, then I got it back into gear again. But it was something I needed to hear, because no one's really telling me what I need to hear, only what I want to hear. And JR was good about just going, hey, man, Kenny, you're better than this. You can't be doing this. And of course, he fined me, make sure it hurt more. But so the road is hard. It really is. But if you manage your time properly, it doesn't have to be really hard.
Mm-hmm. What was it like catching up recently on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast? Was it good to sit around the table with him and talk about the old days?
Yeah, Steve's a great guy. He's a good role model. Same with The Rock. These guys are awesome. And there's a lot of guys there that were good people. We see them in different lights. We don't know who they are as people, but Steve's one of the good ones. It was definitely a pleasure to see him again. He actually was at my house. He came to my house, and we sat down and did that podcast. So yeah, it was fun, and I look forward to the years to come, because I think that there are going to be a lot more stories and a lot more opportunities to be able to sit down and just reminisce with the fans through different types of podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, talking to you is just my producer Keith, who you spoke to before the show, it's like when we started this a couple of years ago, we never thought we would get to people like yourself, Ken. We have just been grinding and sending out messages and building profile, and that's what it takes. So to hear your stories on your own show, your own podcast, to the other wrestlers, and all these old tales that you guys are putting out there, it's fantastic. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun, and I think it's awesome to be able, after you have a great career, and of course I'm still doing the pro wrestling. In fact, is on the 24th, I'm going to be going up against Eddie Edwards in Impact Wrestling on Access TV. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be fun. And then also too, you know, I'm being inducted into the Hall of Fame, the Wrestling Impact Hall of Fame, which is another milestone. You know, I mean, it's an awesome opportunity, and it's definitely something that I am honored to be able to do. A lot of people along the way has helped me get there, but it's a great opportunity, and I look forward to that. I look forward to the match. I look forward to being inducted, but I ain't done yet. You know, I still have more to do.
I won't keep you too much longer, Ken. You're training at the moment, and have you still got the Lions Den, your gym?
No, it's a ministry now. I do different ministries and motivational speaking and appearances. So yeah, I just got to a point to where I couldn't be in the gym all the time, you know, because I was traveling so much. And when you're not there, things just don't get done. You're letting other people run it. And of course, they're feeling like, well, why can't I just open my own gym? Because I'm running the whole thing and he's taking the money, which is true, right? So you expect the people to run your gym, and you're paying them. And they get to a point where they're going, well, I could do this myself. And that's true. So I had to step out of it, let other people go and do their thing and open their own gyms and be able to create their own business. And then that way I can focus on being able to engage with fans and be able to do things that I want to do now.
Can I ask, just back in the day, though, when the Lions Den was in full flow, was there initiation to get in that gym if you had to, if you wanted to train there?
Yeah, you know, those tryouts, I think people still talk about today. They're brutal, you know, but I learned it from Japan, you know, when I went down there. And, you know, if you want to be a part of something, what are you willing to do to get there? You know, are you willing to give everything you got to be on something that you want to do? And so when I did it that way, you know, I felt like I got the best of the best, because if you got somebody that can pass that tryout, I can teach them, because I know they're never going to quit on me. Because they ain't going to quit then. And then when they finally get somewhere, they're not going to quit then on you then. So it was a great way to separate the boys from the men.
Mm-hmm. So what was in it? Can you give us an example of something you'd have to do?
It was basically 8 hours of just working out. Of course, you'd have breaks in between, going from one place to another, like going to a park where you did runs and barrel walks and crawls and carrying sandbags and jugs of water that were moving. The water was moving around, so you had to run and balance that. And of course, then you would head back to the gym, and then you would do all body works and stuff like that, with your sit-ups, push-ups, squats, 500 squats, 500 push-ups, 500 sit-ups. So it was meant. I mean, and I mean, again, it changed every time, because we want people to get used to it and be able to start telling other people what the tryouts were. So we changed it all the time. Sometimes it would be doing barrel walks and mountain climbers, and just everything we could add into working at a park. And the next thing, we would take them up to the mountains, and we'd have them running up hills and climbing trees and picking up rocks and carrying them 100 yards. Just everything we could do to be able to work their body out to a point to where they couldn't go anymore. And they'd have to keep getting up and keep trying. And it was a failure thing. But what would you do when your body failed? Will you keep going, or will you quit? Because it was meant for you not to pass. It was meant for you to fail, but to keep going even while you're failing. And then, of course, when that was all said and done, they would actually fight. And you want to talk about, man, I should have filmed those, because they're funny. Because when you got guys fighting each other that are that worn out, it's like two guys in a tough man that had just gone 3 rounds. They can't hardly lift their arms, and they're trying to fight each other. So it eliminated guys getting hurt too. We used to do it where we bring guys in and they would fight some of the fighters they had to keep getting up, but it just because they were so tired, it just wasn't the same as them, especially when we started getting more people that would come in to try out. Then we were able to have them go against one another. And then you would really see how goofy it would be when they couldn't hardly move their legs or lift their arms. And they literally had to go in and still fight. It eliminated guys getting hurt because he couldn't hit hard enough. But it also showed us the mentality that every one of those guys had, of whether they would step up when they actually knew they had nothing in the tank left, but they were going to step in, they were going to box for 3 rounds, and then they were going to grapple for 30 minutes, separate times. And so imagine being in that state of mind, knowing you can hardly lift your arms, you can hardly move your legs, but you got to go in and fight another individual, and you're wondering, even though they went through the same thing, if they're feeling the same way you are.
The mental side, you break them down. Yeah, it was legendary. Even over here in Edinburgh, Scotland, we'd heard about the Lion's Den and the training and initiations and all those sorts of things.
Well, people keep asking me why we don't do it now. And the reason why the Lion's Den had failed later on, after multiple organizations started coming up, was that no one would go through those tryouts, because all they had to do was go to a gym down the street or to a gym in the state next to you, and they would have a fight in 4 weeks or 2 weeks. Just come to my gym. If you're tough enough, we'll put you in the ring. We'll let you fight anyways. Because they didn't care whether or not these guys succeeded. They just wanted bodies, because they were promoting fights, or that they just wanted their gym to have your name on the shirt, put you in there and fight. But they were just turning fighters out over and over again. But the way we would do it was that you could only get into Pancras and you could only get into the UFC through me. Because there was other ways, but I was the main guy that would train people, to teach them to get in there. So guys would come to me, and they knew what they had to do to get in. And when they got in, they knew they were going to fight in the UFC. They knew it, that they would get a shot in the UFC. And so therefore I would have guys come and try out, and they would give me that effort and give me everything they had, because they knew this is the only way they could get there. Yeah. But if they were able to go to a gym and not have to do anything and get in, then they didn't have to worry about it. But I think it takes away the integrity of a human being when you don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to spend anything. And when I'm talking about blood, sweat, and tears, to get where you want to go, how much more would you appreciate if you did?
Yeah, well said. Well said. Ken, just the last thing, how's COVID affected your world? You know, coronavirus, everything that you've been going through, and training and fights and all that in your industry. How are things?
Yeah, I mean, it shut us down, because my whole thing was going out and doing meet and greets and doing independent shows. Even with me doing Impact, that hasn't slowed down. We've still been doing that with no fans. But as far as me going out and doing meet and greets, I mean, I had so many things lined up to go out and meet fans and signing autographs and doing different types of independent shows. It shut down. I mean, it was brutal, and I missed that, because I enjoy engaging with the fans. I enjoy going out and shaking hands and meeting people who supported me over the years. And that just got shut down, and it just kind of took away some of my excitement, you know, because I like sharing my stories with people. I like hearing their stories, and being able to meet with them and talk with them, and not be rushed or having to be somewhere and not having an agenda like fighting or having to go do a show. It's just there to meet people. Yeah.
Yeah, Ken, well, your stories are incredible. It was awesome watching you during your career. And as I say, the WWF era was where I discovered you and followed you there. And some of your matches are unforgettable. And Ken, I really appreciate you joining me for this chat. It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. But I also too want to make sure that people get to know how to reach me.
Yeah.
And be able to follow us on things that we're doing, because we've got a lot of exciting things we're doing right now. So I'm excited. We're doing a Valor BK, which is a bare knuckle fight league. There's some out there. I know you guys have yours over there, but we're doing ours. We've done one show. It was a hit. Of course, you know, COVID came in. We didn't want to do it without having, you know, fans in the crowd. I'm big on fans, man. I just think they make the world of difference in everything. So we're going to wait. So probably into 2020 or the 2021 we're going to be doing Valor BK again. If you want to follow us and check us out, what we're doing is valorbk.com. And you can go on there and check us out. So we're going to be doing that, man. We think it's the next big thing. So come check us out, man. We'd love to have you because we're going to be ramping up again, man. valorbk.com. Check us out, man.
Is there guys coming from the UK over to fight in your event?
Oh, yeah. We had Godbeer come over and win our first one.
No.
Mick Sweeney was in it. So we got, like I said, man, we have got some pretty amazing fighters. And we still have footage up on our website. So if you want to go to valorbk.com, check it out. You can go check out some of those fights that happened in our first one. And I promise when you watch it, you're going to want to see our second one.
Yeah, Ken, awesome. And a shout out for your own podcast. Some of the stories on there are epic. And you take it right back to your childhood and go into some real depth. So thank you very much for putting that podcast out. It's great.
Appreciate it. You go and check out those podcasts. Go to kenshamrock.com podcast. Check it out.
Good man. Okay, Ken, all the best.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.